Hey guys, Mr. Middleton here. Today we're going to talk about the law of cosines. In this video you should be able to determine when to use the law of cosines, and you should be able to use the law of cosines to find missing side lengths and angle measures. Alright, so last time we talked about law of sines and how we can use that to find missing angles and sides. But if you notice this triangle down here, you'll see that we aren't able to use law of sines. And the reason that we would not be able to use law of sines here is that we don't have matching corresponding angles and sides. So the sides that we have, this side 21, we don't know what angle B would be. 42, we don't know what angle C would be. For angle A, it's 39, but we don't know X. And so we don't have a ratio that we can have all the way set up. So we won't be able to use law of sines here. And that's where law of cosines comes into play. Okay, if this were a right triangle, or a triangle that we knew to be a right triangle, we could use trig, but it's not. So law of cosines tells us what to do for finding side lengths when we are down to this information. Okay, now there are basically three formulas that we can use depending on which side or angle you're trying to find. Okay. It is not necessary to memorize all three of these, okay? But hopefully you'll notice some common pieces to each, okay? The lowercase letters represent the sides, and the uppercase or capital letters represent the angles. All right, the side that's by itself in the formula, so you'll notice in this first formula, A is by itself, probably the one that we'd be trying to find. Has the angle that's by itself. Okay, so side A here, cosine A at the end. Okay. The other two sides are in the 2 times side portion of the formula. So 2 times B times C. So we're talking about A here. A is by itself, so it would be 2 times B times C. You'll notice that same thing with B. Here we have B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine B. Alright, so let's go through a problem here. Let's find X, and we'll see how that works out for us. Alright, so we're trying to find X here, and if you want to, you can label these sides as B and C and A to give yourself some kind of comfort for this first problem. There's really no assurance that those are going to be the variables that are used as you're trying to solve problems, though. So make sure that you're either able to rename your vertices and sides, or able to just kind of flow with it and understand what's going on. Okay, so we're going to be trying to find side A. Okay, we're going to be trying to find a side. So I'm going to plug that in. X squared equals the other two sides squared, so 21 squared plus 42 squared minus 2 squared times 21 times 42 times cosine, and in this case it'll be 39. Okay, so since I labeled all my sides there, you should be able to see where I'm getting those values from. Okay, and I'm just plugging it into this first equation here. Alright, now that we have that done, tough part's not all the way over. It's going to be important for us to do our order of operations in the correct way. Hopefully you notice that, hey, this kind of looks like Pythagorean's theorem. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. And essentially it is. But when we do Pythagorean's theorem, if I just type this in, cosine 90 is 0. Okay, so when we do Pythagorean's theorem in a right triangle, what happens is that this last part of the formula goes away. It ends up being 0, so you just get C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Okay, when cosine is not 90, then this extra piece is necessary. Okay, so that's why we're doing that. Hopefully you can see some of those similarities. 42 squared, and that gives us 2205. Now the way that we can do this I guess the safest way that we can do this is just do the side in front of the minus sign, do the stuff behind the minus sign, and then subtract them together, okay? So I'll do 2 times 21, still a shot, times 42, times cosine 39. And that gives me 1,370.88. I should probably say 89 if I write that. Okay. All right, and then I subtract them. So 205 minus my answer from last time, and that gives me 834. So I get that x squared equals 834, and I'll just say 0.1. Now remember, that's not our final answer, that's x squared. In order to find x, I have to take the square root, so square root. And I am a proponent of just using second answer. That way you don't have to round your answer to get an accurate calculation. And so it gives us that x is 28.88. Since our directions told us round to the nearest tenth, I'm going to say 28.9. Okay, did they give us units? Nope. Okay, and so that's what x is. So that's using law of cosine to find a missing side. Similar to law of sine, similar to the Pythagorean theorem, with a little bit more math to it. All right, now let's do some more practice. It says use the appropriate law to find the missing side lengths or angle measures. Find the measure of angle L to the nearest 10th degree. So we want to find this. I'm going to just put x here. Okay. Now, again, if we could use law of sines is pretty nice to just set up a fraction. I would choose to use that. We cannot in this case, again, because we don't have a matching angle to go with any of these sides. And so law of cosines is what we're going to have to use. Now I'm trying to find this angle, okay, and what I can do, L, I can name this N, I can name this M. Okay, I'm trying to find that angle, and so I'm going to set this equation up so that that angle is included in my equation. And so that means I'm going to set it up so that this side, its corresponding side, is alone. Okay, so if I wanted to write this out like the formula that you saw on the front, I could say L squared equals M squared plus N squared minus 2mn times cosine L. Okay, so that's an example of maybe needing to be able to do that with your formula. Okay, and so I'm plugging in my values. That's 10 squared equals 8 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 8 times 12 times cosine, I'll just say x because that's the variable I placed in there. Okay, so notice the only thing I don't know is this cosine x. Okay, I'm going to plug everything else in and try to get rid of it, see what I get. I know this is 100 equals 8 squared plus 12 squared, and that's 208. Then I'll do as much to the backside as I can. 16 times 12 is 192. 192 cosine x. Okay. All right. So here, this is where the algebra doesn't get tricky, but where the mistakes happen. Okay, we're going to solve for x. Our first step should be to subtract 208 from both sides. And so I get negative 108 here. Please don't panic. It is supposed to be a negative number because on the right side, we still have that minus sign there. Okay. So now I need to start working on getting x by itself. I'll do 108 or negative 108 divided by negative 192. And that makes it back into a positive. So I get cosine x equals 0.5625. In order to get rid of cosine, remember now we're doing our inverse cosine, and so in our calculator we'll have inverse cosine of 0.5625, and that should give us the value of x. Inverse cosine of that answer gives us 55.8. Okay, to the nearest degree means 56 degrees. All right. All right. If we needed to find the other angle measures for this problem, so let's say we had a situation where they're asking us for all the angles and all the missing sides. After we had one pair of sides and angles, one corresponding pair complete, then I would tell you to use the law of sines, okay? Because law of sines is a shorter process, a little bit easier of a setup. All right, let's do this last one together. I'll probably leave it like one for you to complete. It says find all the missing pieces in this triangle. Give angle measures to the nearest degree and side lengths to the nearest hundredth. So 2 decimal places for hundredths. Okay. So again, I really wish that they would have given us a matching or corresponding sides and angles, but they didn't. So we're going to have to use law of cosines. I know this angle, so I'm going to start off by finding the side C. Okay, so my equation then is going to be c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times cosine c. Okay, and now I can plug in all the values that I know. I don't know c squared. I know this is going to be 16 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 16 times 5 times cosine 61. Okay, so 16 squared plus 5 squared is 281. I'll do the second side, 2 times 16 times 5 times cosine 61. Notice I can just type all that in and not have to worry about doing very much with that. I'll write this down, but again, I'm just going to use this information from the calculator. So now I'm going to do 281 minus the answer, and that gives me 203.43. Again, I'm writing that down, but I'm not going to round in my calculator until I'm all the way done. So to find c by itself, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Square root of this answer is 14.26 is what it tells me. So 14.26, and that's the first missing piece that we know. Alright? Now that we know that this is 14.26, we do not have to use law of cosines again. We have a side and its matching or corresponding angle, and so now I can use law of sines, which is a lot nicer for me. So I'm going to set that up, 14.26 over, what is that, sine 61. Since I know that this is 5, I'm going to say that should be the same as 5 over sine b. And now I can cross multiply and find that. So 5 sine 61 equals 14.26 sine b. Divide by 14.26 sine b. Or sorry, 14.26, I was right. Okay, and so now I should have sine b equals 5 sine 61 over 14.26. Alright, and now I'm just going to do this in my calculator. 5 sine 61 divided by 14.26. Okay, and now to get b all the way by itself, I need to do the inverse sine. So I'm going to write that down, inverse sine of this number. 8. I guess it's 9. Okay, again, I write all that stuff down, but in my calculator, I'm just going to put second answer, so I don't have to do that. Okay, and so I know that that angle measured then is going to be 17.8 or 18 degrees. That's angle B. this is side C. Okay. All right. And now for that last piece, I don't really have to do anything too crazy because it's just a missing angle. And I know that in a triangle, all these triangles are going to add up to 180. So 18 plus 61 gives me 79. And so I know that this has to be 101. Okay. Right? 180 minus that. All right, good, cool. And that's angle A. All right, so law of cosines, a little bit longer to remember, but definitely you're able to remember that a little bit. Focus on these rules. That's how I remember it. And then just make sure that you're using your order of operations correctly, adding to the algebra. And from there, we'll take practice. All right, guys, see you.